Motion's going.
Yeah, well, I'm super excited about this as well. So before we get started, let me do a couple announcements. First of all, if you haven't already, say hello in the chat. Name, age, and where you're coming in from. Name, age, and where you're coming in from. We love to see everyone who's here. And for some reason in Zoom, you got to change the to everyone. Otherwise, you just send it to the hosts, which is Emily and I. But name, age, where you're coming in from, and say hello. That's step number one. Step number two, I want to thank the sponsors. So the sponsors have, for this event, we got 8 of them this time. They're growing. They've hooked it up with tons of gear, free gear that we're going to give away. So Deny Goalkeeping, Guardian Gear, Lax Shield, the CL Ace, Warrior Nemi QS goalie head and gloves we're giving away. We're giving away ECD impact heads. We're giving away Nutty Buddy, protective cups, and String King is also a sponsor. Support these brands because they've hooked it up. We've got tons of gear we're giving away. Thank you to the sponsors. How do you win the giveaways? I forgot to check which intern is covering this session. It's Simon. Simon, my man, if you could drop the 3 steps in the chat. It's simple. You take a little selfie of yourself watching the session because you can see Emily and I. We cannot see you, and we love to see you. We love to see who's on the other end of this training. It really helps us. And that's step number 1. Take a selfie. Step number 2, post that on social media. You can tag myself at LaxGoalieRat. You can also tag Emily. And then step 3, email help@laxgoalierat.com and just say I posted. And if you do not have social media, that's fine. You could just email the pic directly in step number 3. And hopefully Simon can drop the steps into the chat. Okay. VIP pass is still available. So you're going to have free access to the replays to watch it 24 hours. That link will be sent out as soon as we finish here. It's replays.goaliesummit.com if you want to go directly there. But the VIP pass is access for life. The price is going to double tonight. So I would jump on that if you want to get lifetime access, all 20 coaching sessions. Come back whenever you want. I rewatch these sessions all the time as I get questions from different goalies, and I go, oh, so-and-so talked about that in Summit number 5. Let me go back and rewatch. It's awesome stuff. It is an amazing resource. That's the VIP pass, laxgoalierat.com/VIP to get that. Again, under $100 for 20 coaching sessions. That's a pretty good deal if you ask me. All right. Who's pumped for this session? I'm pumped. Let me welcome back in Emily. Emily, I want to turn it over to you. I think we're good to go. One more announcement. If you guys have questions, throw them in the Q&A box. Sometimes the chat gets going real quick and I can't see the questions. So put in the Q&A box. We'll get to as many as we can. And with that said, Emily, let me turn it over to you.
Wow. Awesome. So excited. Wow. Oh my goodness. We're like at 130 people. This is amazing. And I've been seeing where everybody's coming in from, and we have people from the UK, which is so cool. We've already got questions. Okay. So I'm so excited to be here talking. Really, we're going to center this conversation, this session around emotion, which is one of my favorite things to talk about. I am fortunate enough to work in the lacrosse space with some amazing lacrosse goalies. And a lot of times our conversations that I have with both just lacrosse athletes, but goalies in particular, is really around emotion regulation, right? Navigating emotion, because in sport, there's a lot of emotion. So we are going to dive in. We've got a lot to cover. I'm so excited. I'm going to share my screen and let's rock and roll here. Damon. Okay, perfect. We're good to go.
Yeah. All right. We are good to go. I can see it.
All right. Amazing. Okay. So let me hold on one second. Let me just move the, okay, there we go. All right. So this session is going to be all about navigating this emotional whirlwind of a journey being a lacrosse goalie. And, to be fair, I really want to preface that this session is going to be amazing, even if you're not a lacrosse goalie. So if you're a parent, if you're a coach, I'm going to be giving you some foundational, important information on emotions in general. And we as humans all have emotions, right? And so really the takeaways from this session can absolutely, and they are going to be really important for a lacrosse goalie, but they can also, really impact you at all levels of your life, okay? At the end, we'll kind of go through questions. We'll take them as they come as well. And then I will let you know where you can find me and how to reach out. All right. So just a little bit of background on me. I won't spend too much time here, but anytime I log onto a session, I do like to know, well, who am I listening to? So I am a mental health therapist. I live where I'm located. Home base is Baltimore, Maryland. I do quite a bit of traveling because I work with teams and athletes all over the country, but home base is Baltimore. I'm a mindfulness and performance coach, a former Division I athlete. I played soccer at UVA. I always laugh. I have no idea how I got so involved in the lacrosse space because I never played the sport, but sometimes that's how it happens. And I also coached collegiately. So I spent 3 years coaching as an assistant coach at the University of Pennsylvania. And it was really there at Penn, coaching in the Ivy League, Division I soccer, where I really started to think about working with athletes in a different way. So it was when I left coaching and I pivoted and I went back to school and I got trained in all this stuff. And I really felt very passionately about helping athletes, yes, enhance their performance, but I really think that enhancing performance and helping athletes be the best that they can be on the field is actually a byproduct of just helping athletes holistically be healthy, mind and body. Okay. So that's what I do. And, you're going to get a little bit of a glimpse into kind of some things that I help athletes out with, which is really exciting. So here's kind of our session overview. This is, if we were to zoom out and look from a large lens of like, okay, where are we going tonight with this session and what am I going to learn? We're going to talk about what is the emotional journey of a lacrosse goalie, all right? What is that? What does that look like? What are you guys experiencing, right? As you're in the cage or just going through a season or training, all the above. And then we're really going to talk about, well, what is this thing called an emotion, right? What is that? Because we really cannot navigate more efficiently if we don't know what we're working with, right? So I'm going to give you some just very foundational education. In a more clinical setting, we could think of this as psychoeducation, right? Giving you information about emotions. And then we're going to come in and wrap it up with, okay, great. So I've got this information. How do I actually navigate, right? Giving you tools and skills to be able to do that more efficiently, take some things away, and start to implement them into your day-to-day and your performance. I always say whenever I go in and do a session with a team, an athlete, an organization, I really encourage my athletes to, because you're going to get a lot of information tonight. All right. And this may be one of those things where, this is where like the translation to actual like sport training is like, many of you on this Zoom call probably didn't pick up a lacrosse stick and start, and become like the lacrosse player you are today overnight, right? It's a journey. And so the same thing is said with the more mental and emotional piece of things and how we learn those skills. And so if you can take away one or two things from my session tonight and start implementing them tomorrow, right? Then gold, right? That is what we're looking for. Okay. And then we'll round it up with questions. Okay. So I want to set the stage here because this is such a massive topic. Okay. Emotion regulation is incredibly big. It is a beast. And especially when we were talking about performance, it's really big. So I want you to really think about this session being pretty broad. Okay. I'm trying to give you a very broad brushstroke of how to regulate emotions a little bit better. So this is going to be less about kind of being in the game in the moment, right? And more about broadly, how are we setting ourselves up for success in terms of regulating our emotions? Okay. Because I always tell my athletes, I was just talking to one of my PLL guys last week, heading into the weekend games in Ohio. And I said, if you are waiting until the game to work on your emotions and regulating your emotions, way too late. Right? It's way too late. We cannot be waiting, right? And this is very applicable to even just more sports specific things that we're working about, right? Whether it's tactical or technical. If we are waiting until game time, go time, right, to work on this stuff, it's too late, right? So the more that we actually practice this and work with this and think about this, our emotions, right, in life, oh man, the better we get at actually using what we're learning and what we're implementing in game time. Okay. So just wanted to preface that. And if some questions come up about, more in the moment, right, in the heat of the moment, if I get scored on, et cetera, we can touch on it. But I'm trying to paint a bigger picture of setting you up for success both on and off the field. Okay. All right. So let's start with this emotional journey of a lacrosse goalie. Okay. This is the title of this session, and this is where we're going to start. All right. So I think it's even better to start with just, remove the goalie piece of the equation, and let's just start with an athlete in general. It doesn't even matter what sport, right? Sports have a lot of emotions. Think about it, right? We have winners, we have losers, right? There's competition, there's heat, right? There's a lot of emotion behind sport and being an athlete. That's great. I love that. I think it's great, right? But with that comes, right, both internal, which means inside of us, right? Something that we are putting on ourselves, and external, right? Meaning things coming from the outside, right? Outside of us, pressure. Right? So if we think about internal pressures that athletes may face at times, right? This is our own expectation of how we want to perform, right? These are our own goals and our aspirations, right? The things we want to accomplish. And, for many athletes, right, we know that, oh gosh, man, oftentimes how we feel about ourselves, our self-worth and our identity actually gets morphed into being an athlete, right? So there's this, right? And then on top of that, right, we're navigating a lot of external pressures, right? This is society. This is the public, right? This is social media. I mean, gosh, guys, I graduated in 2012. I graduated college in 2012. Instagram didn't even come out until the fall of 2012. So I mean, my experience as just a college athlete is completely different than what our college athletes go through today, right? Athletes are in the spotlight constantly. Every single move, right, or not move is being put out into the world to see. We have parents, we have coaches that put pressures and expectations on us, right? We've got teammates, right? For many of us who play a team sport, well, we're not the only one, right? We're not the only one playing. So, we need to understand that there is so much complexity, so many moving pieces to sport, to being an athlete. And that is inherently, right, going to kind of morph and shape the amount of motion that we have, right? These highs and lows. Okay. So this is the journey that almost every single athlete is facing, right? And then, right, we go into the position of a goalie. Okay. So, I will preface this, I was never a goalie. I played soccer, so I didn't play lacrosse, but I think I had I played one game in like fourth grade of being a goalie. I got scored on and it was over. It was done for me. All right. I was a striker. I liked to score goals. Okay. So I am not going to pretend that I fully know what it's like, but right, from the conversations that I've had with the goalkeepers I work with, and then also just knowing sport, right? One, you guys are the last line of defense. Right, which can put a unique amount of pressure on us, right? The game of lacrosse is very fast. It's the fastest sport on land, right, is what they say, okay? There is lots of opportunity to get scored on. So in any given game, right, and let's just take, because I watched the Atlas Water Dogs game on Friday. And I believe the final score of that game was 19-18, right? Mm-hmm. So holy cow, right? If you're a goalie, right, and you're in for the whole game and you're telling me you gave up 18 goals, right? Whoa, that's a lot of goals. That's a lot of opportunities that at times goalies can feel like they failed. Right? There is a lot of, it's the same thing. I've done a lot of work in baseball. I mean, hitting a baseball is like the hardest thing to do in sport, right? There's a lot of failure. Okay. And failure is hard. Okay. There's a lot of messages out there about, getting used to failure, getting comfortable with failure. We have to fail 100%. I don't disagree with all of that, but it certainly does not make failing any easier of an emotional experience to go through. Does that make sense? Okay, so we need to honor that. And the last piece of this is that, okay, so we can cognitively, which means rationally, right, in our minds, understand all this, right? And we can also understand that, like, hey, well, we're one piece of a greater team, right? I believe there's 11 people on a field, 10 people plus the goalie, right, in lacrosse.
In the men's game, yeah.
Great. Okay. We're not the only ones, right? We can cognitively, rationally, right, know this, but feeling the weight of that emotionally is totally different. Does that make sense? Okay. So what you're seeing, right, is so we've started with this, right? Emotions for athletes in general, right? And now we've added a layer here. Okay. And so this is where we are. There is a lot of opportunity for a lot of emotions here. Okay. And so I think it's really important to start here, right? This is, I would assume that almost 150 people on this Zoom are somehow either a goalie, related to a goalie, right? Or are raising a goalie, right? And so we need to understand that, like, there's a lot here, right? And so that is bound to, by nature, stir up a lot of emotion, okay? So let's look at, and we're going to go through like what an actual emotion is and break it down. But I mean, let's look, there's a wide range here, right? Anger, frustration, fear, anxiety, sadness, grief, and loss. Whoo, man, we don't talk enough in our culture and our society, especially our sports society, about grief. Grief's a heavy emotion, right? We're not going to get too much into it tonight, but man, there can absolutely be grief when we lose, especially when we lose big games, all the above, right? Especially I work with many injured athletes, right? Athletes who tear their ACLs or tear a shoulder labrum, right? And there is loss in that, right? In having to, now, right, be out of sport for a little bit, right? So there's embarrassment, there's shame, right? How many of you on this call have ever had some of these thoughts? I let my team down.
Yeah, throw that in the chat, guys and gals, if you can. Let me know specifically what if any of these ring true to you. I know I look at this list right here, and a lot of these bullet points. I'm definitely like, I've said that to myself before, right? Yeah,
everybody's like, yes, right? I mean, the quintessential, like, oh my gosh, like, why didn't I do this? Why I should have done that, right? If I had only done this, right? I mean, look. This can be, really heavy stuff, right? And we also have to remember that, I mean, sport and even within a season, within train, like, we have ebbs and flows within our performance, right? So now, right, say that, you're feeling like you're just in a little bit of a slump, whether it's in training, whether it's in a season, right? And now you've got this on top of, right, everything you're working with. Like, there's a lot going on here, okay? And so my hope tonight is that you're going to walk away with, one, really understanding like what we're dealing with here, right? With clarity. Because again, if you remember, I said we cannot navigate better, right, if we don't understand what we're working with, okay? So hopefully you're going to walk out of here with some tools and some skills to be able to navigate this. But more than anything, right, I typed this out, and kind of as I was piecing it together, like, I want to normalize this. I think something that we don't do well in the athletic community is normalize emotion, okay? And the reason being is, I already talked about this. Human beings, we have a wide range of emotion, but I think this right here is really important, right? And this is why I wanted to spend some time normalizing your experience, because we live in a society. Look at this bullet point number 2. We live in a society, a culture that has really reinforced that emotions aren't good, right? Control your emotions. Keep your emotions in check, right? Don't let your emotions take over. And this, unfortunately, especially in sport culture, the athletic community, I think time after time has been reinforced and then translated to, okay, so just don't have emotions, right? Stuff your emotions, right? Ignore them. Don't act like they're there. Okay. This is really important because this right here, the pressure, right? This kind of greater cultural influence, right? To not have emotions aren't good, okay? Is inherently going to impact how we navigate them. Does that make sense? Because share in the chat if this has also been you, right? You've had an emotion, maybe sadness, maybe grief, maybe anger, right? And you then feel like you shouldn't feel that way, right? You then feel like you don't like that you feel that way, right? And that actually, we're going to talk about this, but that actually fuels the fire, okay? So I want to really normalize, right, that we have emotions. What makes us human is having emotions, okay? You can't actually get rid of them, okay? They don't go away, all right? And they're actually really important. They are very, very important. And they're actually really, really healthy. Okay. Well, let me ask you one more question that you can throw in the chat, right? Because something else that happens to many of us, right? And one of my specialties is actually working with performance anxiety. And if you follow me on social media, I did a whole series on this, right? But something that's a really common experience is if I am feeling really nervous before I play, and I go to either my mom or I go to my teammate, right? And I say, hey, I'm, you know what? I'm really nervous right now. What more often than not is the automatic go-to response that we get from people? More often than not, it's a quick, don't be nervous.
Right.
You're good. You got this. You got nothing to be nervous about. And although that comes from a really good place of them probably trying to assure you and pump you up, it actually ends up invalidating you. Because now I'm hearing this message that, oh my gosh, how I feel right now is not right. And so what we've kind of created in the athletic culture especially is this, don't feel what you feel. And I can tell you right now, that is not how we actually navigate emotion more efficiently, right? Okay. So I really just want to kind of set the stage here in that society, culture, especially sport culture, has not made it easy for us to feel how we feel, okay? Especially when that is defeated, when it is embarrassed, when it is sad, right? When it is grief, okay? It's not easy to feel those things, but hopefully, right, what you're going to take away from here is that, hey, it's okay to actually feel those things, right? That's actually really real. It's very normal, okay? And it's actually very healthy. And two, right, there are actually healthy ways that we can navigate, okay? So let's get into it. Emotions. They are information. If you take anything away from tonight's session, you guys, take away this, screenshot the screen, right? Put it out in the world. I don't even care. Emotions are information, okay? Emotions are incredibly helpful because they tell us, right, what's going on, right? They actually help us navigate the world. They help us communicate with other people. They help us take action, right? They actually guide us to show up as the people, the athletes, the sisters, the brothers that we want to be in life, okay? Emotions are not something that we need to hide, that we need to stuff, okay? That we need to ignore. We actually need to get better at understanding them, listening to them, and then moving through them, okay? So if you take anything away from today, emotions are information, okay? Emotions are info. Got it? All right, so let's actually see if we can give ourselves a definition to work off of here, okay? And here's the hardest part is that we don't actually have a unanimous definition, right? We do not in 2023. Oh my goodness, we actually don't have a single working definition for this thing called emotion. That can be challenging, right? So what I'm going to do is kind of break this down a little bit. You're going to see some language that maybe you don't understand, and that's okay because I'm going to show you three different definitions, and then I'm going to give you how I explain them to my athletes in pretty simple terms, okay? So let's start with just Google, right? I literally just yesterday morning, I kind of threw this into Google. I'm like, hey, Google, what's an emotion, right? And this is what came up, right? Just a natural, instinctive state of mind deriving from one's circumstances, mood, or relationships with others. I don't know if you're anything like me, like at 12, 13, 14, 15 years old, even as a college kid, like I would have been like, okay, what does that mean? All right. So that's Google just giving us a definition. Okay. Here's another one that I actually really like. This is from an author. She's a researcher on burnout, but her research says that emotions are an automatic and instinctive release of neurochemicals in the brain in response to a stimulus. And then we respond. So basically what that means is that something happens, right? The brain releases a bunch of chemicals and then we do something about it, right? That's all she's saying. All right. So that's another one. Let's go to this one. And hopefully you're going to draw a theme from what I'm trying to get at and where I'm taking you. An emotion is there we go. An emotion is the body's immediate physical response to important signals from the outside world that we have an embodied response to. The word embodied simply means that the mind and the brain are working together. So interesting. Essentially, the definition I just gave you and this one are saying the same thing, right? Essentially, something happens, right? And then we have this actual physical chemical response, right? And then the mind and the body react, okay? Type in the chat if you're seeing a theme to all of these definitions, right? Let me check the chat really quickly. Okay, there's a theme coming. Right? Here's the last one. An emotion is an interpretation of an internal or external stimulus that includes a physiological reaction. Okay, physiological just means within the body. Okay, and he also throws into this that emotions are short-lived. Okay. In the chat, right, if you guys are still with me, through all of these definitions, okay, what is a common theme that you're seeing, right, that these definitions are giving you about emotions? Let's see if anybody picks up on it. Okay, connection of the mind and body, body and mind. Woo, there we go, okay? Lovely, right? So you guys
Smart crowd, huh? Smart crowd out there.
Smart crowd. I love it. So what you are seeing, right, is that emotions are a body and mind thing. Okay. And so this is where, and I'll give you, I'll just throw it out there. We're going to get to this, but like, this is where, especially people in the, well, I shouldn't say that. I think you need to be really careful, right? Because there's a lot of information out there about how we think our way through things, right? How we reason our way through things. And although there's not a problem with that, the reality is that actually any emotional navigation has to include the body, okay? Emotions are mind and body. They're very body-based things, okay? So, whoopsies. So how I explain this to my athletes, right, is kind of in 3 chunks, okay? So I basically say that, okay, so the first thing when we have an emotion going on is that something has happened, right? Whether that something is internal, meaning inside of us, or external, meaning something has happened or someone has said something to us, right? So let's think of some external examples here, right? We get scored on, right? We give up a goal. Someone says something to us, right? That's mean or happy, right? Or nice, right? They can also be internal, right? And this is the tricky thing because we have the ability to actually, right, have a thought, have a memory, smell something. Have you guys ever smelled something and then all of a sudden that evokes a feeling or an emotion, right? This is the crazy thing about being human. And I think it's like, I don't know if you guys can tell, but like I get so jazzed about this stuff because I think it's so cool. Emotions are awesome, right? Emotions are info. We have the ability to evoke emotion in ourselves. It does not always have to come from external things. So something happens, whether it's inside of us, right? We think something, we have a memory, right? Or external. And then, right, we have an automatic, an instant physiological or chemical reaction. That basically just means that as soon as that thing happens, the brain and the body respond, right? So I can give you an example of anxiety, right? Anxiety is literally, we just perceive some type of threat or uncertainty, and our brain pumps us with adrenaline and cortisol, all it is. Okay. And then, right, that's that automatic. And I also really want to highlight, again, this is this piece of kind of like normalizing and validating emotion, is that it's automatic. It doesn't like process. It doesn't have time to like, the brain isn't in here going, okay, well, let's think about, do I want to feel happy about this or do I want to feel sad about this? Right? Nope. It's just going. Okay. That's how cool and smart and high tech the brain and body are. Okay. It is automatic and instant. Okay. And then, right, we have some type of mind body reaction, right? Emotions are mind and body. So it could be a facial expression, right? We could have actual physical sensation in the body, right? So another one with anxiety is like we feel butterflies in the chest, right? We have thoughts, right? So we can have follow-up thoughts to our emotions, right? We do things, right? We either lash out at somebody, or we hide, we internalize, right? So 3 sections, right? An emotion is something happens, brain pretty much responds, right? That physiological chemical reaction. And then we do something, right? Something happens. We have a thought, we have sensation, we act, we have a facial expression. Okay. That is what an emotion is. All right. That is the foundational kind of piece of emotions. And it can be really cool once you start exploring and getting into emotion regulation to actually be able to have awareness around this process happening. It's really cool. Anxiety is one of them, right? Because we can very much have almost what's called metacognition, which is like thinking about our situation, or meta awareness, right? And all of a sudden be able to go, oh my gosh, there's that adrenaline and cortisol. It's flooding through my body because I just got nervous about that. Right? It's pretty cool. Like this piece right here is the foundational piece of us then being able to actually navigate that anxiety and any emotion more efficiently. Okay. So let's keep rolling. This is one of my favorite tools for any of my clients, whether it's a clinical client, whether it's an athlete. This is an emotion wheel. If you just pull up Google or your internet browser and type in emotion wheel, you're going to get hundreds of them. There are so many out there. This is just one of my favorites because I like the color breakdown. I like the just the words, the choices that they've used. So what this highlights right here is like, wow, there's a lot of emotions, right? We can feel a lot of things as humans, right? So basically how you read an emotions wheel is those 7 main emotions in the center, right? The fear, bad, surprise, happy, sad, disgusted, angry. And each emotion wheel you look at is going to be a little bit different. And that's the reality because, again, we don't actually have a central working definition for an emotion. But generally, right, what you're going to see is you're going to see primary emotions, or what we call families of emotions, and then the spin-offs. So let's look at the fear family, right? So if we're dealing with anxiety, anxiety comes from the fear family, right? But man, look at this, right? You can be anxious and feel inadequate. That could be a totally different experience than feeling anxious and overwhelmed. You see what I'm saying? And so this is where the nuances and flavors and spin-offs of emotion come up. I mean, just think about the complexity of what we're working with. And I alluded to that when I started with this emotional journey of a lacrosse goalie. There's a lot here, guys. Okay. The other thing that I want to just quickly clear up is that a lot of times people use emotions and feelings interchangeably. We're not going to get too into the weeds of it. Technically, emotions and feelings are different. In layman terms, if you had to break it down, an emotion is what I just described, right? Those kind of 3 pieces of, okay, something happens, I have that chemical physiological response, and then I do something. Emotions are technically short-lived. Like, I think the science says like less than 90 seconds. And then we have feelings, right? Feelings are how we feel or relate to our emotion. And then moods are more prolonged. Don't get too hung up on it. Okay. I typically, right, just kind of talk about all 3 of these as one. Okay. So just wanted to break that down because oftentimes I do this and I get a lot of questions about like, well, am I feeling this or is this an emotion? It's just treated as the same thing. Okay. So all in all, we've got emotions. All right. And, honestly, like when I do this session and I work with athletes, I'm like, go download an emotions wheel, right? That is step number 1. All right. And we're going to talk about this in just a minute. Okay. So emotions wheels, they're very helpful. And again, this shows you that, man, we got a lot going on as a human being. Okay. And as a lacrosse goalie. All right. So, oh my goodness, right? All of the things. Let me check the time here. Oh, we're great. We're cooking. Okay. So we've had quite a journey, right? We've talked about what, what this emotional journey of a goalie is, what you guys experience. Then we've really gone in and looked at, okay, well, what is this thing called emotions? And now it's time to give you some solutions, right? Now it's time to say, okay, how the heck do I navigate? All right. So what I'm going to give you is a very, kind of, again, I told you in the beginning, right? This broad brushstroke. I'm going to give you 4 steps that I feel like are generally very helpful. They take you through kind of a sequence that allows you to navigate emotion, both mind and body. And I also want to share this disclaimer first and foremost, because the reality is that no 2 people experience emotion the same way. Okay. So, I think it's super important, especially in the world that we live in with social media, where like people pop on and just kind of say like, do these 3 things to cure your anxiety, or like do these 3 things to like heal your trauma. It's like, y'all, we are all completely different people, individualized. So the nuances, right, of navigating emotion, there is so much complexity there. Okay. There are countless theories. There is so much research. There are, hundreds and hundreds of skills to be able to do this. I am trying to, for the sake of, giving you some things to kind of take away from my personal experience, from being a therapist, working with athletes, I'm going to give you what I think is like a backbone. Okay. So these kind of 4 steps are a backbone. And then knowing that, hey, like how I navigate it for one, emotion or experience may be completely different to how you do. Okay. So here we go. Here are your 4 steps. I'm going to break all these down one by one. So first is that we have to have awareness, right? This makes a lot of sense, since really what I just took you through is like giving you the awareness about what an emotion is. I must sound like a broken record, but I started this whole thing with, we cannot navigate more efficiently if we don't know what we're experiencing. And awareness is the first part. Okay. We validate and accept. We process and be with, and then we have action. Okay. Again, there may be somebody, across the country or across the world that has a different 4 steps. I am not by any means saying that this is the end all be all. This is going to cure everything. I am giving you some 4 staples and pillars within emotional regulation that I think can be really helpful and can allow people to then tailor and fine tune their individual experience. Okay. So let's get into these. Awareness. Need to take a drink of water. Hold on.
One of the things too. So there was a question from Andrea, and she's not alone. A lot of goalies have this thought, like, how do you deal with anger after a bad pass or a horrible, giving up a goal? Mm-hmm. And so like, I'd like to think about it as we're going through these, right? Like, this is the solution, right? Listen up. This is it, right? Yeah. Right. So first step, awareness. Okay. So anyway, go on. But I want to, those type of questions are what we're answering right here.
Totally. Yeah. It's so great. And like, again, you can kind of think of this, and what I will talk like more broadly to is like having the time to go through this, but then we can also come back and work an example of like, how do you do this in quick time? Right. Mm-hmm. Again, I will tell you, right, the more that you do this stuff and are working on this stuff in your day-to-day life, the more natural and the quicker this process is going to be come game time. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yep.
So yeah, this is step 1 is going to be foundational for whatever situation you're in, because again, we can't navigate if we don't accurately know where we are, right? Because navigating anger and dealing with anger is going to be totally different than potentially navigating sadness or grief, So we need to know what we're feeling. And this is why I love emotions wheels. Obviously, you're not going to take an emotions wheel out onto the field with you. Okay. But again, right, the more comfortable you get with it, right? And I will say, like, especially in and I'm super honest and I share my story all the time. Like I really got into this work from dealing with my own mental health journey. Chronic anxiety, panic attacks, panic disorder. I've been hospitalized for it. And so what I will say is like at 32 years old, like having to teach myself and train myself to do this took time. But now, I haven't had going literally from panic disorder and not being able to go a day without having a panic attack to 6 years later, like I haven't had a panic attack in almost 3 years, right? And that's because this process has become so automated to me that at any given point, like my emotions wheel is like integrated into my system, right? I'm at a point where I don't need to get out my emotions wheel to like go through it, right? So I just want to preface that like the more you stick with it and do it, this is just like the technical piece of training, right? The more reps you get in with stuff like this, the more automated it's going to be, the easier it gets, right? This is why also like the foundation of all the work I do with athletes is mindfulness. Mindfulness is a skill, right? It's a way of being, we're being present, we're paying attention to ourselves, right? To our experience, without judgment, right? And so that really allows us to kind of look at our emotion and identify our emotion and say, oh, okay, I'm really sad right now. And you know what? I'm not going to beat myself up for it. Okay. So this, all of these things really help us gain awareness around our emotions. All right. A key piece of this, again, because emotions are mind and body, we cannot forget about the body piece of this. So this is just a great representation of like all the things that people potentially feel when they're anxious. Look at how many, this is what we call somatic symptoms. So body-based symptoms. Look at how many are here. How many of you identify with any of these if you're feeling nervous? It's the same thing. Every single emotion has some type of physical response in the body. And so we can very much, right, begin to identify our emotions based on what we're feeling in our body. So being able to work again, both thinking brain and body as well. Okay. And so the last piece of this that I really encourage my athletes to do is to like start naming them, like actually identify and talk it out loud, really thinking about language here. Language is so important, right? I am feeling anxious versus I am anxious, right? I am experiencing butterflies in my chest. I am feeling like I want to cry, right? I am feeling like I am just so angry right now. Okay. So kind of these three pieces of the equation in terms of this awareness step, right? So one, right, really being able to identify and catch what we're feeling in the moment. Two, understanding that there's going to be this body-based reaction. And so being able to kind of tap into and, feel, right, where this is showing up in the body. And then three, being really concise about the language you're using. And this is where, again, that emotions wheel can be really helpful. And just thinking about the language. Okay. And not being afraid to really identify your feelings. Sometimes, I was talking to a client, this was a couple months ago, right? And she kind of said to me, she's like, oh my gosh, well, if I name it, right? If I say it out loud, then it's actually true. And I'm like, yes, that's the point. Like, yes, you have to, because it is true, right? It is your experience. So yes, that is going to lead us into this piece, which is step 2, right? So that first step is the awareness. Step 2 is the validation and the acceptance, right? And this is the hardest part for people because it's so counterintuitive, right? Because many people actually just really don't like their feelings, right? All emotions are valid. All of them. Doesn't matter, right? We don't have good feelings. We don't have bad feelings, right? We can have more positive feelings and more negative feelings. I don't even use those with my clients. Emotions are not good or bad. Emotions are emotions. They are real, right? However you feel about something is how you feel, right? Other people don't have to like it. Other people don't have to agree with it, right? But how you feel is real. That is actually your truth right now, right? Your experience is valid. And so this validation piece is like, what does it mean to validate? Well, it's to support it, right? It's saying, oh, if you're to validate someone, right? You're saying, oh yeah, what you're saying is true. So what we're doing with validation is we're saying that like, oh yeah, like this emotion that I have, this is true. This is real for me right now. And that is really, really important because we cannot actually move through an emotion if we don't experience it. Can't, right? What is going to happen, right, is the stuffing, the ignoring, the invalidating our emotion, the running from our emotion is actually going to compound it. We know that we've actually been able to, and this is the coolest thing about living in 2023 in the 21st century, is that we can actually see this stuff, right, with like MRI and fMRI scans, right? It's so cool because we can actually watch this again, because what are emotions? Emotions are really, the brain is just exploding with neurochemicals, right? So we can actually watch within someone's brain and body what happens when they deny what they're feeling. It compounds it, right? So validation and acceptance go hand in hand, right? So what this means, right, is that we are acknowledging and we are respecting that this is where I'm at right now, right? It does not mean, right, that we roll over and stay there, right? And that's what many people think that validation and acceptance are, right? Oh, well, to accept something is to just be complacent. Well, to accept it is just, okay, I'm done. Woe is me, right? No, right? Acceptance, right, is a foundational piece of how we navigate emotions, because again, when we actually accept what is true for us, then we can accurately say, okay, what do I need to do now? Right? Think about it this way, right? If I'm really, really angry, right, and I keep stuffing it down, I don't let myself be angry, right? I keep telling myself I'm not angry. Can I actually navigate anger? No, right? Because I'm not actually acknowledging that I'm angry. Does that make sense? And so now the anger just sits in me, right? It festers, it compounds. This is when we often react in ways we don't want to react. This is when we become people that we don't want to be. This is when we make more mistakes. This is when we, right? So again, right, there's a really foundational piece of, in order to actually move through emotions, right, we have to validate, and then we've got to accept. Okay, yeah, you know what? I'm really anxious right now. This is my experience. Okay, so, all right, anxiety is present for me. Now, how can I go attune to it, right? Now, how can I go move through it, right? So we really cannot skip over that piece of the puzzle, okay? So how do we self-validate, right? How do we validate our feelings? Because dang, we do not learn this, right? What we learn more often than not is invalidation, right? That quintessential example of like, you go to a teammate, I'm nervous. Don't be nervous. You got nothing to be nervous about, right? Well, sheesh, now I'm left feeling like I'm weird, or I'm the odd one out. I shouldn't be nervous, right? And a lot of times, what does that make us do? So we're not only nervous, but now we feel like an outcast, okay? So it compounds it. So these are some of my favorite self-validation phrases. This is how I'm feeling right now. It's normal to feel this way. This actually makes a lot of sense that I'm angry. My feeling of fear is valid right now. It's okay to be sad, right? It's okay to be nervous, right? This is where I'm at, and it's really hard. Self-validation is a skill that, oh my goodness, I mean, I spend months teaching people and working with people on, right? This requires so much kindness, right? And self-compassion. And a lot of times it is just this permission to feel how we're feeling. And so a lot of my work with athletes is like giving them permission to feel that way. All right. So for any of you that are still on this Zoom session, right, I will be your permission giver, right? I'm giving you permission to feel how you're feeling, right? Especially in tough times, as goalkeepers, navigating all the stuff that you're navigating. Okay. All right. Let's move on to step 3. Oh my goodness. Process and be with. Yikes. This is where a lot of my athletes get the heebie-jeebies. Okay. This actually means we have to feel. Yes, it does. Right. This is where mindfulness can be a really helpful tool as well. And I really want to preface that, like, feeling our feelings, processing and being with doesn't have to be a 24/7 ordeal, right? We can shift in to feeling and shift out of feeling, right? So what I mean by that, right, is that and a lot of times, especially with, you'll see this, I've seen this a lot on social media lately, but also like, it's actually a pretty good tool is to like schedule your time to feel things into your day. And this is why I love a meditation practice. I'm a meditator. A lot of my athletes meditate, right? Because meditation can provide us with that set confined space to like tap into our feelings. That can be really challenging. And then when that timer goes off, okay, go back to your day to day. Right? Go to step 4, which we're going to get into. Go to action. This is where actually distraction can be an okay thing. Do we want to distract ourselves from actually navigating this process? No. Are we allowed to use distraction to shift in and out of our feelings? 100%. Does that make sense? So what this might look like, right, is say you just lost the national championship, right? You're upset, you're in grief, just really, really sad. Okay. So a couple days later, you're still in it. So you wake up and you're just, whoa, and you're tired. Maybe you're crying, maybe you're really upset, and you're going to say, okay, I'm going to let myself stay in bed for another 20 minutes. And you know what? I'm just going to give myself permission, right? I have the awareness, right? This is where I'm at. I'm not going to beat myself up. I'm going to validate. This makes a lot of sense. This is really tough, right? And I'm going to give myself 20 minutes to just be here. And I'm not going to put pressure on myself to be anything else. I'm going to allow myself to be sad because it's okay to be sad. This is really tough, right? And then that timer goes off, right? And here's what you're going to do. You know what? I'm going to go hang out with my friends for a little bit. You know what? I'm going to go walk my dog. You know what? I'm going to go to my favorite coffee shop because you know what? I love their coffee and you know what? I need to wake up, right? So we're doing things, right? And again, we're going to get into this step 4, but we're doing things that allow us to kind of dip our toe into our processing and being with and step out, okay? Other things that can help us, right? Dip our toe in and process and be with are these. Journal, write, reflect. Oh my God, journaling, writing, and reflecting can be some of the best ways to process emotions. Put pen to paper. There's actually been a lot of research about what that actually does to the brain. And I mean like not on technology typing or, on your phone. I mean actually like writing on paper. There is something that really allows the brain to kind of, once we see our thoughts on paper, create space from them. It's really interesting research. Go talk to someone. Therapy is cool. Right? I mean, this is what I do for a living. Therapy is awesome. Like mindfulness, meditation, go do something alone, right? Doing things alone can be really helpful for processing. Go to a workout class, go for a walk. One of my favorite ways to process emotions and spend time with my emotions is walking. I live right on the water in Baltimore. I just go hit the little, the harbor walkway, and oh my gosh, it's like the most therapeutic thing ever, right? Move your body. Remember, there's a body piece to emotions. So moving your body, moving through emotions can actually be really, really cool. Coping skills, just stress tolerance, right? These are things like breath work or grounding skills, okay? All of these things are a variety of, there are countless ways. I gave you a couple, right? Countless ways to process and be with emotions, but it is very important that we actually do that. Okay. All right. Last thing here with the process and be with. Remember that this is rarely a one and done. Many of my athletes have come back to me after we've gone through this and they're like, okay, Emily, I went for that emotional walk, or like, Emily, I did some journaling. Why is it gone? I'm like, emotions don't work that way. Okay. You're not going to journal once. You're not going to have, 20 minutes of being with your emotions and it's going to be gone. Emotions are complicated. They're multifaceted. And sometimes, holy cow, it can take a while for us to process emotions. All right. There is no timeline on emotions. I'll put it that way. Right. I had a client the other day who's dealing with an immense amount of grief and burnout. And she goes, when is this going to be over? I said, I don't know. I'm a therapist and I can't tell you that. We don't have a timeline for emotions. I know people I've worked with clients that are still navigating emotions from things that happened 10 years ago. That's how emotions work. So you cannot expect that, okay, great. I went to this session. I got this PowerPoint on emotions. I've got these 4 steps and I did these 4 steps and I should be good. No. Right. these 4 steps and engaging in these 4 steps is a repetitive process. It's a journey. Okay. So just really keep that in mind. Okay. Let's get to the last piece and then wrap it up. Now, right, we've done these 3 things and let's move into action, right? So now let's think about action that is really aligned with our values, our goals, and the person we want to be in life, right? So this is where, and again, this is one of those things where this is not saying that, okay, so I've done these 3 steps and the action, this is a quintessential example, like you get really sad and you go eat a pint of Ben and Jerry's, right? That's an action, right? Is that action? And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with eating a pint of Ben and Jerry's. Been there many times in my life. But does that action actually align with your values, your goals, and the person you want to be? I can't answer that. Only you can, right? So here's what we're thinking about, right? With values and goals, like what are the things that guide your life, right? What kind of person do you want to be? Well, I personally, I'm using my own examples. Like work ethic is one of the most important values to me, right? And also treating people well. So an example, right, of an action-based item that really aligns with that is like, okay, you know what? Yeah, I'm really hurting. I'll use the national championship example, right? We lost the national championship. It's still, it's a couple days later. I'm struggling, but you know what? Here's an action. I'm going to go lift. I'm going to go move my body, right? That aligns with my greater values, the type of person, the type of athlete I want to be, right? I also want to treat people well. What if I actually reached out to somebody else on my team and asked them how they're doing, right? Because we know that connection is actually one of the best things for navigating emotion, right? These are just examples. The possibilities are endless. And I'm more so giving you things to think about in terms of action, right? Goals, right? Say, you want to be an All-American next season, right? So what is one thing, right, today, after going through those 3 steps, awareness, validation, process, right, that one thing that's in my control that I can do that may take me 1 step closer to that goal? You know what? I'm going to go pick up my lacrosse stick. I'm going to hit the wall for 20 minutes. It can be simple. It can take 10 minutes, right? But thinking again, these actions of how are they actually fitting into my life, right? How I want to live my life and the type of person I want to be. Okay. Think of this holistically. So think of this as not just an athlete. I gave you some athletic examples, but like think outside of sport, right? So we can even think about what action-wise, right? What behaviors, what practices just allow me as a human to feel more centered, grounded, and aligned, right? Because when we are navigating difficult emotions or a plethora of emotions, things that ground us, that center us, and that help us feel aligned and actually bring us joy can be really, really helpful. They can steady us, right? So an example for me is like being outside. I told you I'm a walker. Like to go walk on the water is like one of the most soothing, peaceful things for me. So when I'm really in the trenches of navigating a tough emotion, I will go walk every single day. Even if it's just 10 minutes, right? Because I know that little action, right? That little behavior of going to walk and be on the water will bring me some type of ease and groundedness, right? And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for pockets and moments that can help us, right? Come back to ourselves because emotions can really throw us off, okay? With this, right? Think about, so much of navigating an emotion, and especially when we are navigating tough emotions, is taking care of ourselves because emotions are hard. Emotions are real. They take a toll on us, right? So we really need to think again. I talked kind of about this grounded, centered piece, but like think holistically, mind, body, soul, right? Socially, environmentally, right? A lot of times this includes just making sure that your basic life essential things are taken care of and you're really almost heightening them, right? So that's sleeping, what you're putting in your body, right? Whether it's liquid or food, right? And social connection, right? So really making sure that in these times of really tough, difficult emotions, we're really prioritizing these, right? You're getting enough sleep, you're feeding yourself well, you're staying hydrated, you're getting social interaction, right? So all of just, again, these kind of like what we think of as like basic self-care things, but emotions can actually be really dysregulating for the mind and the body. So anything that is going to help us regulate mind and body is going to be really, really important. Okay. So again, right, I'm going to pop up, last slide here is this just 4-step process, right? So we have this awareness of what we're feeling and where, right? We name it, we label it, we validate, and we accept. We can't navigate if we don't allow ourselves to actually feel how we're feeling. We process, we be with. So we spend the time, right, feeling and processing and moving in and out of that. And then we take action, right? Holistic action that is aligned with our values, our goals, who we want to be, and we really heighten that self-care. Okay. So I really hope that you guys have found something. Oh my goodness, we're 1 hour in. I really hope that you guys have found something helpful here. Okay. Again, I always say, like, take 1 or 2 things away. These are just kind of like final thoughts that I want everybody to always be thinking about. This first one's really interesting because connection is such a massive piece of how we navigate, but we also need to be really intentional about who we're connecting with, right? Because people have the ability to either poke and prod at emotions, invalidate our emotions, right? So be cautious of who you are reaching out to in times of emotional kind of turmoil. Therapy is cool, man. I mean, you know me, I'm a therapist, so I'm always going to say therapy is cool, but like, this is what therapists are for, right? Remembering just emotions are complex. It's never as simple as thinking differently or willing yourself to feel or not feel something. It doesn't work like that. Okay. So hopefully in all of this, you kind of see the complexity of emotions. All right. So here's where you can find me. I am on pretty much every social media channel. I've got a blog. That's my website, my Instagram channel, and then my Twitter. And then I'm going to drop something in the chat box that you guys can download, but I've got these kind of 2 free resources. I'm actually launching the holistic recovery guide as soon as I get off here. I have to post it. That's out, that's live. You guys can download it. Let me see if I can, hold on. I'm going to stop sharing this for 1 second and see if I'm pretty positive I can actually just drop this into give me 1 second, you guys.
While you're doing that, I would love to hear, what's your number one takeaway from today's session? We mentioned at the beginning, it's a lot of stuff. It's a lot of info, right? To your point, Emily, it's not like you watch this one session and you're like, yeah, cool, got it. I'm now a mental expert. I know exactly how to handle my emotions. The same idea. You don't go to the gym and do one workout and be like, great, like, I'm now an Adonis. I'm now set, right? No, right. You're in there every day and you're working on it every single day. And that's kind of the same idea with our mental game. We're working on it every day. So yeah, your number one thing that you learned from this, answers are coming in. And by the way, say thank you to Emily. I thought that was amazing. Awesome job. I know we're over the hour. If you got to go, you got to go, no problem. But we do have some questions. Could we answer